how do they navigate it when the person that is negative is in a glued-in position and they can't unfriend them, they can't unfollow them?
It's a very good question.
In this episode, we're talking about how to deal with the negative people in our lives. But before we jump in, make sure to subscribe to the show, like this episode, and share it with a friend. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Live Change podcast. My name is Chad, and I'm joined by my friends Jason Mitchell and Joanna Wishard. And we're here. We're talking about we as Christians, how do we, now that we're lives changed by Christ, how do we live that change out? And so today we're talking about negative people. And I've been kind of stoked for this topic because it's a pet peeve of mine. Negative people are a pet peeve of mine, and we're going to talk all about negativity and what do you do with those negative voices in your life, maybe from the past, present, future. We're going to talk about that today. But we're going to start out with, I have a new segment for the podcast.
Okay.
It's called That Really Fries My Taters.
Okay.
And
I love fried taters.
Who doesn't?
I do.
That person is un-American.
I like all taters.
Yeah.
I know. Bowling
Especially
alley
one
taters.
from bowling alley.
If you didn't catch that episode, Joanna loves bowling alley French fries.
I do.
It is just disgusting.
Oh, whatever.
So we're talking about what fries your taters. And so in this segment, we're just going to talk about what are our pet peeves? What are the things that irk us, or as I like to say, that you know what fries my taters? And I want to challenge everyone at home. Like, you can play the home game, the home version of this. Just leave comments in the comment section about what are the things that are your pet peeves, or if you agree with some of ours or disagree with some of ours, let us know. If you disagree with Joanna, let her know. Okay,
It's always me. Everyone always has to disagree with me.
It's always you, because I want to direct them away from me. So I shield myself with you, Joanna, and that's why we're friends.
I can't stand repetitive noise.
What do you mean by that?
Like tapping.
Oh, yeah.
Or like just like repetitive sounds, which is like really like it's hard. So Kevin
what about like a song that has like a drum, like
that's fine because there's like a point to that.
It has a melody.
But
yeah,
you're talking about like
like Kevin is a drummer, and so like he's like tapping constantly or whatever. So like when we first started dating, like it was like, dude, stop. But now with like small kids, it's like they get stuck on something and then it's like over and over and over. So whether it's like a word or a noise or whatever, like repetitive noise like drives me nuts.
So is it the noise or the repetition?
I have no idea. I don't like it at all.
So that fries your taters, repetitive noise.
Yes.
Okay. Something like this is, I always thought that your family and my family could go on vacation together. I'm starting to wonder if we could, because I am a repetitive noise guy.
I know.
Like I
know.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
It's okay.
I know.
I click.
We share an office wall. Just kidding. I'm totally joking. I've never heard it through the wall.
Chad's just on his office wall going,
oh my gosh, please do not. I will kick you out.
In my move to my new office, I did lose my bouncy ball, but I did have a ball that I used to bounce against the wall.
Oh my word!
Oh wow! I thought you meant you sat on. You ever seen those? I thought you were just bouncing.
Oh, like Dwight Schrute in the office.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
that's funny.
I don't know why. I'm a fidgeter.
I know.
I am a strong fidgeter. I've
fidgeters usually are the ones that make the most repetitive noise in my experience.
There's a correlation.
I have worn out 3 fidget cubes.
I don't even know what that is. Is that like a Rubik's Cube?
No,
what's a fidget cube?
A fidget cube is these little cubes that have all these little knobs and stuff that you can fidget with your thumb.
Oh, really? You've worn those out?
Yeah. I've actually broken pieces because I've fidgeted that much in meetings.
You got a lot of energy. That's what it means.
Yeah, it's my brain's
come out.
My brain's going really fast.
It's good probably for you.
Oh, it's very good, but I've burned them out.
You've probably burned out a few people as well.
Apparently, Joanna.
A few co-workers.
So, Jason, what fries your taters?
Here's one that I thought of. Self-checkout lines with produce when it's not easy to get and then the light has to start flashing.
Yeah.
And you got to wait about 7 minutes and then you're like, this completely defeated the purpose of self-checkout.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Self-checkout lines.
Like that.
I hate it when there's only 3 bags there and you have groceries for 4 and you have to like remove a bag and it's like, please return item to the scale.
I have a lot of pet
Oh,
peeves about grocery stores. And if we're going to start going down this road, I could take a while. I don't like it when you have to pay $25 to rent a buggy, which I call buggies. Here up north, they call them carts.
Yeah, no, we all caught that, and we were all like, what is a buggy?
Yeah, it's a cart. I don't like that. I don't like it when you have to bag your own groceries. I don't like it when you have to bring your own bags.
You get the quarter back.
It doesn't matter. It's a matter of principle. It's a matter of principle. I don't want to pay. Yeah,
Well, you don't have to pay. Like, it's not paying.
But it is.
It's just like they just borrow the quarter for a minute.
Why?
It's
They are so skeptical of my willingness as a human being to bring a buggy back.
No,
that you're
actually,
going to charge me a quarter.
There's a way more liability and risk management for carts in a parking lot.
And
So, like, if you just leave them all willy nilly, then it's like that's more of a problem for the carts in the parking lot.
You've put your liability problem onto me.
No.
I'm charging me a
For
quarter.
super low prices.
No. There's no low prices.
yes, there is. And two, it's so that you don't notice they don't have cart corrals. They don't need to pay for employees to go out and do those cart corrals.
I want to go somewhere and so basically I'm going to go grocery shop now and be your employee for that 30 minutes.
But
we're all talking about Aldi's. Let's just call it what it is. Okay?
I love
so if you
Aldi's.
work there at Aldi's, I love you. I just don't like your corporate policies.
Of the cart
the buggies.
See, now
not only the buggies. Oh, it goes way further than that. I mean, you've also got to bag your own groceries.
Yeah.
You've also got to bring your own bags.
Well, bringing your own bags, that's normal at a lot of places now.
I don't like that's a pet peeve.
Well, why though?
It fries his taters. You can't question the reason behind the fries.
I didn't question your finger tapping thing.
Well, you actually did.
Yeah.
You really needled at it. You were like, is it the repetitiveness?
Because I was interested, because she kept talking about the noise. I was like,
yeah.
what is it?
But
you mentioned your kids like saying a thing.
Yeah.
Because that's not a tapping
Especially when you don't
Yeah.
understand them.
But the Aldi thing that I understand though. I had to get over it. But I actually turned out to be a good thing because I like giving my quarters to other people because it gives me a friendly moment.
I like doing that so I don't have to take my cart all the way back to the front of the store. I'm like,
nice.
you need a cart? I don't care about the quarter. Go ahead.
Oh, what do you mean you give your quarters? I don't understand what
Like,
you're
I
talking
just
about.
give them the whole
Like
cart.
I give them the cart and they're like, do you want a quarter? I'm like, no.
No, I'm good.
Oh,
And
okay. Well, I've never had anybody do that for me. I've only been there twice. So, and then I decided I would never go again. So anyway,
I don't mind bringing my own
Aldi
bags.
doesn't want you. Aldi,
they don't. And so there is an air
Yeah,
of pretentiousness about it as well that
Yeah,
I'm
like,
not down with. So
hey.
I'll go to Wegmans.
Yeah,
I love Wegmans.
yeah, that's fine. We don't need your
The
kind at
most
Aldi.
down to earth place in America.
But you have to take your
Wegmans.
own bags to Wegmans.
That really bugs me, and I've let them know. I have. The poor cashier has had to hear my. They've had to hear my. Are we in California conversation 3 times now?
Holy cow! So poor
Guys,
Wet.
it's for the planet.
Yes, I agree.
Oh,
but
Joanna.
at the same token, I tend to feel like I like customer service. So what fries my taters is customer service.
I like that you're really trying to make the segment title stick.
It's happening.
I'm not saying it.
Everyone is going to get on board with this. Fries my taters. What fries my taters is poor customer service. Nothing.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Oh,
Nothing-
I don't like that either.
Nothing fries my taters. Like when you go up to a like to order a pizza
Mhm.
and you get up to the counter and they look at you
Yep.
and they go,
Like, oh, am I bothering you?
"Oh, totally." And
Yeah.
they look at you and they go like, "Yeah."
Yeah,
And you're like,
I'm with you on that.
"Oh, okay."
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And then like I guess I want to order. Like, well, what do you want? Oh, just be nice to me. I'm. Do you not want my business?
I'm with you on that.
I also dislike it when I'm at a restaurant and my glass is empty for what seems to be an obscene amount of time. Like when I'm just
okay.
looking at it and I'm like, please, may I have
I'm
some
so
more?
thirsty. Can you see me not coughing on all the salt I'm consuming?
Totally.
I don't mind that one quite as much because I'll just ask for it. I mean, just hold it up.
But then
Shake it in front of them. They don't understand what that means.
Every server in here is like, oh, I hate him.
Yeah, totally.
Jingling your glass.
I am their pet peeve. You know what my pet peeve is? When someone shakes their glass in front of me.
You would never do that, though.
I would never shake it, but I would ask. I mean, I would just say,
if you
hey, can I
don't
get
know
a
this
little
about
more?
Jason, he loves to go to the extremes, but the truth is usually significantly less
No, I would
than what
never
he.
do that to someone.
I talk about this because one of my pet peeves is actually negative people, and I tend to try really hard to be a positive person, but it does come natural. My wiring tends to well, as a matter of fact, I've been told my personality is much for some people. But
I would never believe that.
I know. Can you believe it?
You're like, you think I'm a lot. Imagine if I officed next to you. You don't know. You don't have that. You don't know the half of it.
Shock and awe. So for me, like negativity, but negativity and negative people it seems like they're really pervasive in our culture. It seems like every one of us knows what negative people are, but there's differing levels of negativity. So we're going to talk about negativity and negative people and how do you deal with it? Because there's a couple things, so examples. So there's negative voices out there. These are people that are negative to you. Then there's negative influences where people, maybe they're not negative to you, but because of them, you do negative things in your life. So negative voices, negative influences, but we're going to talk about all those kind of things and what it does. And then we as Christians, how do we deal with that? Because it's not like we can just unfriend the whole world that is negative because we've got... What's that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying like because of the scale.
Yeah. You can't unfriend every negative person, or at the same token, where are we supposed to be Jesus in the negative? And, so like we're going to talk about all that today, and I really want to get into it. But first, let's talk about influences. So what are some important influences you've had in your life, like in your childhood or even now? Like who's been influential for you, or what influences have been, what things have been influential to you guys?
Well, yeah, like friends that have been around or your family or things like that.
Oh, yeah. So like family's one of probably the largest influences.
So some of it is like the influences you have been given. So it's like your family, it's like not even when you're younger, it's not like you're really changing that.
No, totally.
But then like as I've grown up, it's like been friends or teachers or coaches or, things like that or people like that.
Yeah, I didn't actually think of coaches until you just said that, but coaches have probably been some of the most significant influences in my life.
Really?
Over years. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so someone that hasn't gotten as deeply into the sports cabal, why don't you tell us why coaches were influential to you?
I think, well, I think that there's something, wildly significant about participating in team activities. And that doesn't have to be sports, but anything where a group of people has to or wants to accomplish something together, I think is just an incredibly valuable thing. So sports was always that outlet for me. And so there's probably something just naturally inbred to the coaching relationship for me that was like, they helped get us there. They spoke into my life. I've always believed like they always had the best. I mean, I had some horrible coaches too, but I mean, some real bad ones, but one of the best. I mean, I still have memories of, I remember a coach, my football coach in high school, Jerry Mays, and I remember him one time I was walking through the hallway and I was a punk in a lot of ways back then. And I just remember him grabbing me and pulling me to the side. And he said, "Hey, Jace, when you're cool, you don't have to tell anybody." Oh. And that totally rocked me. Like I remember thinking differently after that. And it's like, I'm acting, and he could see it.
Wow.
I'm playing a part. And so anyways, and because of, when you go, because here's the other thing I think with sports for me, or at least why you were saying coaches, because they see you at your worst and your best and your most vulnerable when you can't go anymore or when you're tired, and then when you have wins and victories. So it's like they see you at the human experience, kind of is encompassed in sports in some ways, at least, again, I'm talking at a very personal level, but in a team dynamic. And so I think so there's an element of like, we've been through something together.
I love that.
Anyways, I hadn't probably thought of coaches until you said that.
When I asked the question, it was about like what influences, and I thought about like institutions, like schools, and like college and
Teachers.
stuff. But it all came down to people. Like
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
irony
yeah, yeah.
in all this is I can't think of anything that has influenced me as much as people. Now, people within institutions, like the church was a huge influence in my growing up and of my family and everything, but I always think of a face. There's always a person behind every
Totally.
influence. There's always that person. I think in youth group, there was, pastors. And why I became a youth pastor for so long at LCBC was, how influential youth pastors were for me. And then I think of my parents and I think of my mom and how influential, she was. And I think of my wife now and I think of my best friends and it's, it's all people. So, but that takes me to why do you think, I think people disregard how important people are and how important people's influences on us are. So how does ignoring this influence endanger us? So, like, for instance, if people are the most important influence we have, we all just said people, that's the most important. If we don't appreciate how important people's influence is on us, how can that become dangerous?
Well, I think I think that there's a little bit of a myth we buy into about autonomy, like that we are completely autonomous. Um, and we like to believe that myth because it makes us feel, I think, strong and independent.
Yes.
And I think especially in American culture where that's definitely the ethos of sort of Americanism.
That whole, like, walk to the beat of my own drum.
Yeah, and I'm an independent, free person. And there's a lot of good in that probably brings with it a sense of ownership and dignity and self-worth and all that. The problem is, or where it can really cross the line is, the truth is none of us are completely autonomous people. And I think we all fundamentally know that, which means we are dependent and we do have interconnectedness to other people and we are influenced and we do influencing. So, but I think there's a little bit of that. We just want to all believe that we're stronger than the people around us or the influences around us. And we find all sorts of ways of rationalizing that, well, we could rise above that and all that.
And that's what creates the disregard. But what happens when we start to undervalue the influence of people? Do we allow negative people in? Like, so like, I think one of the things I'm trying to figure out is like, so imagine the young guy that has a whole bunch of friends and he doesn't realize he's being influenced by them. And when the mom that has her kids hanging out with whoever at school and doesn't really understand who their friends are and doesn't understand that those kids at school are influencing her child to change and to be different.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think too, I mean, actually, even from Kevin and I's own story, like when we started dating, we started dating in high school. And like I was very much involved in like my youth group and choir and like definitely like at church whenever the like church was open and like involved in something, right? So then Kevin and I started dating and his I think he'd be okay with me sharing this. His story wasn't necessarily the same. Like we didn't have the same upbringing when it came to that. And so like I definitely started doing less of that than when Kevin and I started dating because he was influencing. And so it wasn't even that like Kevin was like a bad guy or like he was doing things that were like the opposite, like, or wrong. It was just, it was starting to change then like my behavior or the things that like I was involved in. And so like I remember having a couple people in my life saying like, hey, are you noticing this? And it was like, yeah, but I'm good. Like, you know? And so like that was definitely like a part of that. And then that like then led into college. And so anyway, like Jesus kind of captured kind of our story in a really awesome way. But in those couple of years, like absolutely nothing was inherently bad, but I was definitely being influenced by like my surroundings.
It's amazing how we do find ourselves in crowds sometimes doing things that we would never typically do if we weren't in the crowd. And there's like, I think there's a sociological term for this where we kind of hide in a crowd or a mob or whatever mentality or mass mentality. I always think, so again, we're talking about sports now twice. So, but so if people aren't related to that,
I think people like sports.
but I think you understand the metaphor. But the Philadelphia is a great example. So the Philadelphia Eagles are all famous for a lot of things, but one of the things they're famous for is I think it was 1968. I could be wrong on that, but anyways, a guy was playing Santa Claus and he came out for, at halftime, one of the games for a performance. They couldn't find, there was a snowstorm the night before, so they couldn't, this guy who was supposed to play Santa Claus wasn't there. So they find this guy basically in the front row. He's a skinny, raily little kid. And they're like, can you be Santa? He says yes. He comes out. Billy boos him. Everybody, because of the snowstorm the night before, there's snow in the stadium, they throw snowballs at him and are booing Santa. It's kind of like this cliched sort of story about Philadelphia sports fans and all that. But it actually is true. Like, it really did happen.
Booed Santa.
Yeah. So, and threw snowballs at him. And here's my point. None of the, so 100% of those people walked by a Santa the day before that because it was Christmas season, and none of them felt compelled to pick up a snowball and throw it at Santa. But that day they did. Why? Because they looked around and everyone's throwing snowballs, and you find yourself doing something that just 24 hours before that you would have never considered.
Yeah.
And it's because of, this is what happens in a group dynamic sometimes is we find, how many times does that happen to us? You find yourself laughing at a joke in a group that you're like, I wouldn't have laughed at that.
Yeah.
I don't, or you find yourself walking in a way or doing something that you're like, I wouldn't have done that. But something happened in that group dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
People influence us both positively and negatively, and consistent influence changes who we are. So if you're sitting in the stands week after week throwing snowballs at Santa, eventually you'll leave the stands and you will throw a snowball at Santa because it's changed who you are.
Well, there's a proverb. It's one of my favorite proverbs. It says, walk with the wise and you will become wise. And then it says, walk with fools and you'll suffer destruction. Like, it will end up leading you to some bad places, but walk with the wise. And it's just it's an ancient way of saying you'll become like it's the thing we all know, right? You become like the people you hang with.
There's an axiom that we would always say in student ministry, which was, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yep.
And it's just who it is. It's what it is. So, but what makes negative voices stick? So we can fill our, I am sure that all of us have hundreds of positive influences and voices in our lives, but then there's the negative ones. And I know the people listening, they can all think of maybe that one or two or three voices in maybe their past, present, that they currently have. Why is it the negative voices just permeate in us so what's the word I'm looking for? So persistently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, before that, I want to go back to actually one other thing and jump into that. But you were talking about why negative voices or influences kind of get in. I don't think we have a filter. I don't think we're real critical of that kind of things. I actually think friendships and relationships tend to be almost like, have you ever found yourself munching on something, eating, and you're like, I don't even know why I'm eating right. You just didn't even, I know I have, where I'm snacking and I'm not even hungry or what. And so I think it's actually, we just don't put a filter on, is this good for me or not? We don't even think through those terms. And a lot of times we settle because we make acceptance or proximity our only standard for whether or not we should let this person in or not. And so acceptance would be, here's what I mean by that. Acceptance is, do they accept me? And that's really our only standard. So there's a lot of people who might accept you who are not good for you. So acceptance is the worst. That's the lowest rung of the ladder for whether or not you should be in relationships with people. There's a lot of people who accept you right to really destructive places. The other filter we tend to use is just proximity. Well, I've got it because they go to the same school, or I work with them, or whatever. And we don't think critically about. And when I say critically, I don't mean negatively. I mean critically as in deliberately. We don't think deliberately about those friends because and then we find ourselves.
I've never thought about it. That's absolutely true. And I think that's the point. The whole point of this whole first part is what we were trying to get at, is the fact that we disregard one of the most important things that will change our lives, and we don't put near enough weight.
A filter on it, or think it deliberately about it.
Absolutely. We spend so much more time picking out what kind of car we're going to drive than we do what friends will influence us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I don't think that it even starts. Even thinking about working in stores or working in the retail space, like sometimes when you have fresh eyes, you are jumping into a situation. You're like, "Ooh, I can sniff out like exactly where the negativity is and where." But then I think sometimes it also happens where you're a part of a group or a friend circle or a team, and then it changes over time. And so sometimes I also think we're not necessarily quick to see that it's changed. So then when someone else with fresh eyes walks in, it's like, wow, y'all are like really negative, or, whatever, fill in the blank.
And you didn't see it.
And you're like, oh, are we?
That's a good point.
So I think sometimes too, it happens over time through osmosis. And sometimes I don't even know that you realized you like got to one of those places by the influences around you.
That's definitely family dynamics. Because and it's like when you get married and your spouse starts coming in and they're like, hey, that's not normal. You know how your dad, I'll give you a great example. I was talking to someone yesterday and they were telling me that every day, is when he can remember growing up, every night his dad showed up with a 6-pack of beer in a brown paper bag. Every single night his dad came home from work, as long as he can remember growing up. Then he gets married, he kind of moves out and he sees other family units. He's like, oh, they don't do that. But it was normal.
Yeah.
And sometimes like family units are really sort of an example of what you're talking about, where the relationships in your family, you just think that is because that's what you grew up in. And then someone steps in, you're like, oh, not everybody eats in front of the TV. I don't know. I mean, like I'm trying to think of something like, and it could be good or bad. You just realize, that's what I thought was normal.
Oh, I've said so many things to Kevin, especially like, I don't know, like, those just random old wives' tales. Like I feel like everyone's family has their different flavor of that. And Kevin, I just remember early on to be like, I've never heard that in my life. Like, I don't like, that is weird, Joanna. I was like, oh, is it? We've been doing that. Like
fry your taters. My family, we talk about that really fries my taters.
Yeah.
What was your question though about negativity?
Well, I just to sum up all of that, I also think what Joanna was saying, also there was another part that I want to just pull out because I thought it was really wise. It was sometimes what starts as good influences becomes negative, and it's the current. You will go with wherever the current goes. So if the current starts to go negative, you will go negative. You are a product of the friends that you have. So so it's not like you just pick wisely for the first time. You have to constantly be navigating and constantly be asking, is this still healthy? Is this still good?
Yeah.
What I was talking about with the negativity though is, why do negative voices stick?
Oh.
Why do these negative...
What do you mean? Do you mean why do the things they say stick? Or do you mean why do we stick with them?
Because remember, there's two kinds of negative. There's negative voices. That's people that hurt us with their actions and the things they say that are negative. And then there's negative influences, the people. So I'm more talking about negative voices here. So the voices that we hear of people that are negative in our life, the negative, the toxic, the pessimistic, the people that tear us down. Why is it that someone's words that hurt me, it seems like they void out 100 people's words that are positive?
Because the neurology supports this. I saw a study like 2 years ago that said that they found that negative stimuli imprints on your brain instantaneously.
What?
Instantaneously, a negative stimuli does. Probably because, honestly, a self-preservation sort of mechanism in our
and
mind.
You don't want it to happen again.
Probably. That's what I would have. I mean, like that's a Jason Mitchell hypothesis. So that's not what I read in the research. I don't think they were trying to draw conclusions. I think they were just trying to say, neurology says now, I mean, it shows that negative stimuli imprints instantaneously. Positive stimuli takes 7 seconds to imprint on your brain circuitry. So the implications of that are, well, and it's like so obvious, right? Because this is why you can do something, you can work on a project at work and you have 99 people tell you incredibly well done, great job. And one person says something negative, and what do you go home and talk about? Or what are you thinking about? You're not thinking about any of that. You're thinking about the negative. That's because you didn't live in the positive for 7 seconds, enough for it to imprint, but it didn't take any time for the negative. So,
and then I think you layer your own wiring on top of that.
Oh, go on.
Then like that.
What's that mean?
Even
like
more different, or like
your own wounds from the past, maybe.
Right,
Or your, yeah.
And your own voices start to put it on, repeat.
Totally.
And that's
now you got a soundtrack.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know I was going to study neurobiology today, but that was fun.
I guess we should probably find a link to that research and put that in the notes. I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Like, it is interesting.
I know what I'm going to do tonight. So let's share some real world negative voices in case people are like, I don't know if I have negative voices. Let's give some examples that you've seen. Maybe it's not in your personal life, but you've seen, maybe on social media or friendships or family relationships, or what are some of the negative things in the voices that you've seen? Either negative influences or negative voices.
Well, I know two different veins probably that impact me the most is like, I care deeply about wanting to be the best mom I can be. So like whenever, like that is, how would I say that? Like when I, don't feel like I'm measuring up or I could be doing more, like it's really easy for me to see those moments and like miss out on the moments where it's like, actually, no, you were present and showed up at the baseball game or, whatever. And then I think the other side of that is like, then at work, like I want to do my work really well. Like I believe this is like where like God has called me. And so, I want to do that really well. So then like, actually I'm probably the person that it's like, you can tell me 99 great things about the thing I just did, but if you tell me the one thing, like that's the thing like that I will.
So yeah, so you're
like, I resonate with that real deep.
Your negative voice is almost always your own. So like it's
yeah, totally. I definitely have a harsh inner critic.
Aw. So
Well,
when
I think that's
so
common.
when I compliment you, it doesn't sink in.
Or you might
it just
be maybe skeptical of it or cynical of it. Or?
Yeah, or I'm just like, cool, like that was really nice, but like, what's the wrong thing?
Yeah.
For me, one of the negative voices I think I see happening is I see on Instagram, I see a lot of posts from young women who have negative voices that are their significant others, boyfriends, spouses. I've seen. It's probably another one of my deepest pet peeves is when I see a man or it can be a woman too, being a negative voice and saying mean things to their significant other. So I was on one that just stuck with me. This woman was describing some of the things that her boyfriend said to her, and it was things like, if you gain weight, we're breaking up because I don't date fatties. And the post literally just stopped me in my tracks. And I couldn't believe, and she stayed with this man. And I couldn't believe that negative voice was there. So sometimes it's someone that's supposed to love us, but they are hurting us. Or I also have friends that have had very different childhoods. Like my mom was my biggest cheerleader, but I have some dear friends who it's the voice of their mom that persists, that negative voice of their mom saying, you're this, you're too this, you're not enough of this. And they can still, even 20, 30 years later, still hear their mom's voice saying, you're not enough. And that voice is still influencing. When I was in high school, so I've always been a really positive person, but it's amazing how quickly I because of the eating potato chips with like friends, like, you just don't even think about it. I surrounded myself with very negative influences. Not only were they negative influences, but they were negative voices too. I walked away, like if I started feeling positive about myself, they were real quick to tell me how stupid I was.
Yeah.
And maybe some of you listening are like, that's me. Maybe it's your college roommate. Maybe it's the kids down the hall. Maybe it's, your neighbor. Maybe it's your best friends. But you walk away being like, why am I afraid to say certain things because they'll make fun of me?
Yeah.
Or why is it that I always leave feeling like I drank too much, I went to a place that I shouldn't have gone, I did things that I shouldn't have done because I was with them, or I feel crappy about myself, I don't like the way I feel when I'm around them. These are negative voices.
Yeah.
But they're my friends.
Right.
And I've just always had them as friends.
You reminded me of another one, which is sometimes it's joking that's disguised, and it's joking that's kind of I should say this: it's negativity or criticism disguised as joking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's real common. but I think if you looked at it from objectively and you came, like if, in other words, if an alien were to step into your home, or if not an alien, let's just say if I were to step into your home or you were to step in, you would see it real clearly. Like, oh, all that joking you guys say is joking is you're making fun of each other.
Yeah. It's like that fresh eyes. Like
yeah,
when an outsider then jumps into that scenario,
yeah,
you're like, this is terrible.
yeah, yeah.
Doggone it. When did people become punchlines?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we're all on the set of Friends, and we're all like just really quick to try to get that jab in for humor, and it's like we forget that those are just actors.
Yeah,
yeah. And I think it's like some of that stuff just breaks my heart when you can see it and other people can't. And then on the flip side, it's like, oh my gosh, well then why is it like so quick to break my heart for others, but I still beat myself up so much?
Yeah.
And so then I think like that's also just an interesting dynamic, because then like, I mean, even like being a parent has changed that a little bit for me, where it's like now I can see even like my kiddo who's into elementary school, like we're dealing with a ton of different dynamics that then he's experiencing. And he just came home with a story last week where like someone had hurt his feelings in just a way he wasn't expecting. And so then that just becomes...
Wait, someone hurt Finn's feelings?
Yeah.
What are their names?
So then it's just like, then to see it through even like your kids' eyes and like the negativity through your kids' eyes, and then you have to try to explain it to them. Like, then that's also, I think, really hard.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because you see their innocence starting to get chipped away.
Oh, I could just cry thinking about that.
I know, it's really hard.
The first time, okay.
And they realize that the world is
mean,
tough and mean.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's like, yeah, then it's just heartbreaking, because some folks' experiences, like that's also their home life, not even. So then it like, then you like force yourself to put yourself in that other kid's shoes that you're like, dude, he's acting like this because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. But that's still my kid.
But that's still so hard. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
well, that takes me to my next question is what creates negative voices? So like, I think one of the ways that we're combating negative voices is we have to understand what created the negative voices, what created the bully on the playground, what created the friend that tears down every time you feel good about yourself, they tear you down.
Yeah.
Or the spouse that has to give like, jokes about my physical appearance or whatever it is. What creates that?
Yeah, I'll go back to just my personal, like what I shared a minute ago around like wanting to be an awesome mom and like wanting to do my work well. Like some of that is because of past experiences I've had, or like, I mean, some people will say like, your childhood wounds. Like, I mean, I could sit here right now and like all of the experiences that led to having a tough inner critic, like I could relive them in a minute and tell you exactly like the first time like a kid made fun of me on the playground, or the first time I was told, hey, you didn't do a great job at that. The first time I was passed over for a promotion because I was told I didn't have it in me. Like, so I think it's just those things then that like then over time that creates that.
I completely agree. I think it's the way we've learned to manage through the world. It's the way, whatever the way we've learned in order to kind of make it through life, to protect ourselves and to let's just protect ourselves. That becomes usually our thing. So for when I'm negative, for instance, it's almost so like with my kids, let's just say my kids want to do something. So I'll just take, this is an easy example. Like my kids want to do something and I discourage it because I'm afraid they'll get hurt because they'll fail at something, whatever. And so I become I'm not sure you want, that's me.
Yeah.
That's my crud.
Yeah.
That I haven't resolved, because that's my way of protecting how I protected myself is you don't whatever risk or whatever that might be a simple example. But now I've been a negative voice in her life because it's about, I haven't worked through my own stuff of dealing
now
with.
We have a cycle.
Well, that's generational sins and generational repercussions that the Bible talks about. That's how it gets passed down.
Go on.
Well, I mean, like look at Abraham, who he has this fear that I think he's in Egypt at the time, and they look at Sarah, his wife, and apparently she was very attractive, and they're like, "Who is that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's my sister." So he lies about it. Then you have Isaac, his son, where someone sees Rebecca, his wife, and says, "Who is that?" That's my sister. He just does the exact same thing. You find this again and again, like these patterns tend to get passed down because you're never reflective on, oh, that was my way of trying to protect myself.
Yeah.
And it's lying in that situation.
Yep.
For someone else, it may be joking and you're hiding behind the jokes or it might be, as long as I'm always putting others down, I can feel good about it. So it might be that. I mean, like whatever it is, it's just it's a self-protective sort of
because there's almost always like, when you go out in I had to have this conversation with my son, so my son, there was a kid that was negative on the playground and hurt my son's feelings. And I had to help him understand hurting people hurt. I had to be like, Parker, hurting people hurt people. And often when a kid chooses to be just hurtful, he's hurt too.
Mm-hmm.
Someone hurt him, or someone taught him that hurting people is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or at the very least, someone has taught him that you don't need to be sensitive. Maybe he's not hurting, but he's been taught that you don't need to be sensitive of other people's feelings like we teach you. And it's trying to stop the cycle, though, is really, really hard. So you can almost find that the negative voices out there have been a part of a cycle, and no one has put the foot down, the line in the sand saying, not from this point forward. And that's hard.
That takes a ton of self-reflection and a ton of work.
And I think sometimes it's like you were saying, like self-preservation or like defense mechanism. Like it is interesting in some situations, like even like those kids, they actually need that self-defense or that defense mechanism at home, but they don't know how to turn it off at school because at school they're safer than they're at home. So anyway, like there can be so much, I think, that goes into then how that plays out in the people around you, that if you're not even aware of their situation or like, what's happening, then yeah, it's really easy to say like, oh my gosh, like they're so negative or they hurt people. But
because a lot of those things serve us well, especially when we're younger. The ways that you protect yourself or the ways that you have to find ways of kind of surviving at times when whatever, and it actually serves you well. It's good in a sense. The problem is when you're 31 and still living as if you're 9.
Yep.
And the threats have gone, but you're still protecting. That's what I mean. That's the work of going, oh, I can accept that I had to do those things or I had to live that way or I hid behind whatever this thing is in order to survive. But now I'm holding my wife responsible for something that she's not like, I can trust her, but I don't because, you know what I mean? Because I had to learn here, you don't trust people because if you do, you get hurt. Then someone comes along, it's like, no, they're truly trustworthy and love you, but you still treat them as if, no, if I trust you too much, I get hurt.
Yeah.
You're doing the thing. It's like, I had a counselor one time and he always just used to say, you came by it honest. Give yourself some grace. Like you came by these things honest and you had to, it's just time to grow out of them.
Man, I love this podcast. And I love these conversations that we get to have together because we start out talking about the people that are experiencing negative voices, but we have a heart as Christians for the negative voice because they're broken. They're broken just like all of us, and they hurt, and Jesus loves them as much as he loves us. And so I love that we get to talk about the fact that it's not just about eliminating the negative voices, but some people out there listening to this podcast are the negative voice. They are the negative voice, and they are still living out the patterns of the past, patterns of their family, or patterns of self-preservation or protection. And they're hearing this and they're saying, I've been told I'm the negative voice. I'm the one saying that mean thing to my spouse. I'm the one saying it to my kids. And they're feeling convicted right now. And they're feeling contemplative of, and so just unscheduled question here. What do you say to, what's the first step in helping someone with that's starting to experience self-realization that maybe I'm the negative voice, I'm the negative influence?
Well, there's the first step is actually recognizing it, owning it, like taking ownership of that, saying maybe I it's not even maybe, we all are in some capacity, right? So repenting. So that's kind of coming clean before God. So it's like acknowledging it, repenting, which is kind of saying, God, that wound, that grieves your heart, that I'm still perpetuating these kinds of things in people, that I'm the source of negativity and criticism and all that. So there's two things. And so that's one is a vertical sort of repenting to God, but also to the people, or repenting people around you. And repenting just means turning. That's all the word means. It just means turning around. It's an acknowledgement that the way I've been walking is not a good direction. I turn around. So it's asking for forgiveness. It's apologizing. And then the third step, in my opinion, is it's not enough. I think it's frustrating sometimes to just know I don't want to do that. Like, I think we all have a sin, and sometimes that can burden us. Like, I don't want to say that, but God, I just said it again. I don't want to be that. You've got to know why you're doing those things.
Yeah.
There's an engine underneath that makes the car go, and when you just focus on, I just need a new paint job, it's like, no, the engine is the issue. And that, in my opinion, is you probably need bigger than yourself resources on that. Like, you got to probably talk to someone, because in other words, that's when you start to think about, what did I learn how to survive? What are the core messages I've learned how to survive through? And how is that today?
Yeah.
That's the work.
Wow.
That's the work.
Wow. That's tremendous. So what do you say to the person? So let's go back to the person that's experienced negative voices. And maybe this is a person that is negative, and this is why, or this is a person that is experiencing negative voices from the past. So this person isn't even influencing them anymore. They're not in their life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the voices, Joanna. Because I think you started to hit on that, and I want you to go a little bit further now. Like, it's like, what do you say to that person that's like, I still hear my mom's voice. I still hear that boss saying to me, you're not enough.
Yeah.
And Joanna, I understand this is still a journey for you, so I'm not asking you to be like, I arrived. But
no.
What do you say to that person?
Well, so, I mean, some of that is like what I would have said to myself probably. And so I think, Jason, what you just said, like, I wasn't in a place where I could figure it out on my own. And so actually, like, I started meeting with a counselor and just started saying, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what, I'm feeling. And I mean, she was very quick to be like, yeah, it sounds like you have a really strong inner critic. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I have. And so anyway, just through talking it out, like, and getting what do you call it? Kind of like an unbiased, or like, just an unbiased opinion, or like someone on the outside of the situation looking into it to say, like, have you ever experienced this? Or, hey, tell me more about that. That a lot of like my junk is like stemmed from just like some childhood experiences, that like, had I just kind of tried to like muck through it on my own, would probably have taken a lot longer to then figure out, which then like even more damage is then like done along the way. And so like for me, it's like I've had to, so then she helped me figure out like, how do you replace some of that? Or and I mean, we talked about this in a series called Soundtracks. You can find it on our website. We can link it in the show notes. But it's like, once you can like name those things, then it's a lot easier to recognize them. And so then how do you start taking them captive and like replacing them? And that says easy, does hard. I mean, I still like, this is something I struggle with like every day still. But it was really important for me to figure it out. And so like we talked about like generational like cycles and all that. I also think we just have to give ourselves grace. There's no way I'm going to break every generational cycle in one generation. So
good.
Like, I think it's easy for us to want to strive for that, but that's just near impossible. So for me, that is one of the things that like, I just want to make sure, that I can do that kind of work for me now, to figure out how to best lead my family, like, in my kids. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It's basically, it's accepting something has happened and these voices exist. That's the first thing. And then taking responsibility that I didn't create these voices, but it is my job to eliminate them.
Yeah.
And I think there is one thing,
or at least to try to quiet them. Eliminate them still feels really hard.
Turn them down.
Yeah.
So,
but actually also, with also recognizing my husband wasn't going to be able to do that for me. Like we grew up having different experiences.
Yeah.
So like there was a lot of years where like I would bounce this off of Kevin and he would try to help me. But again, like it was more of like, then we'd end up in another circular situation where it's like, oh, this thing's popped up again. And he didn't necessarily know how to articulate because he didn't have the same experiences. So like I would say for my journey, it was very helpful to go talk to someone else versus just staying in the muck or surrounding myself with folks who like ultimately weren't helping me move forward.
Love that.
I when you were saying all that, Joanna, I just feel like it comes down to three things: recognize, remove, replace. Recognize, remove, replace. And so the recognizing is what you just talked about. You've got to recognize those voices and the negative thoughts that you're having that do not, well, I'll talk about what your standard is in a second, but that are critical or negative, like you're talking about. The removing them is sometimes that might be very practical. Are there environments? Are there environments you're putting yourself in? Is there media you're consuming? Are there relationships that you could that feed that? You've got to get real honest about that, and you may have to remove some of that. And then the replacing it is, what do you replace it with? You replace it with the truth. There's only one thing that is true that stands above all things, and that's the truth of God's word. That what God says about you stands. That what it never fades away. It never. Isaiah says that God's word is or Paul says in Timothy that God's word is profitable and will teach us and will correct us. Hebrews says that God's word is sharp and cuts through. It will bring truth. It will expose what we need to expose. What passage am I thinking of in Isaiah where it says that the flowers will fade, but it's God's word will not return void. Right. And so it'll grow something in us. My point is that is the only thing. And what happens is we get to the recognize, remove kind of thing. And then what we replace it with is we look to, this is very dangerous. We run to our husband to replace it, or our wife or our kids. We run to another person to tell us who to replace it. They'll let you down. And by the way, that's an impossible burden to put on another human being's shoulders that you need to help heal me.
Especially likely because they have their own junk.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
So God's word is always true and always faithful and always good. And that is what we build our life on.
Yes. The fact that he chose us.
Yeah.
He chose us in the midst of all the sin, all the mess, all of the muck, all of the destruction, all of the everything. He chose us in that.
Yeah.
We have intrinsic value. We are his child.
Yeah.
And then
go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to say, and then I think the replace, so actually as a part of the soundtrack series, we did 10 verses to replace negative thoughts. And so then you find yourself in a spot where when I can tell myself I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, that takes on new meaning.
Totally.
Because then that is the reminder that some days it actually feels like it's 99 negative voices and I need the one. And so if the one is my creator saying hello, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Even if you don't feel like it right now, that is still true.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I just have to keep reminding that. Or that's when I tell Kevin, hey, can you say this to me a lot today? Or you know what I mean?
I like that.
Because then it's not it's him speaking truth to me.
Yes.
Versus sometimes I think we just want the feel good.
Yeah.
But sometimes what will cause change is we need to be reminded of the truth.
That's really, really good nuance. I love that, because what you're saying is what Kevin can do for you, what your spouse can do, or your friends can do, is remind you of truth.
Totally.
It's what I don't need is your opinion of me, even if it's positive, because your opinion of me might change. God's truth. If you remind me of truth, that is eternal.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And that's the role community can play in sort of a reversal of that negativity.
And this is the whole point of you can't leave a void. You can't just eliminate negative voices.
You got to replace it. You have to replace it.
Yeah. And I think over time, even especially in a marriage relationship for us anyway, that's also matured. And so I'm totally cool saying this. They're one of the things that I will say to Kevin sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of times, is tell me something nice. And like, that is my tell for like, hey, I need like affirmation, or like, I'm feeling really crummy. Like, can you help me? And so early in marriage, it was just like, I don't know, like, I love you, or like, which I mean, obviously is like very like deep and meaningful, but it was just like, it was like a quick thing back, or like, yeah. Now it's like also maturing into like just deeper, because like we've learned like how to speak each other's language.
Kevin knows how to speak even more profoundly into those things in your life, because he knows you.
Right. So now it's things like, hey, you are a great mom, or I saw you with the kids today, or because he also knows the things that like will trip up my inner critic. So then like helps me.
So we have a big population of singles that they listen to the podcast. And so can it be someone that's not a spouse?
Oh yeah. I have friends that also know. I don't necessarily tell me something nice, but yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it has to be a trusted source that can point you to the truth. So, but let's talk about
this. Is why church is so important, by the way. This is why church and gathering, this is why in Hebrews it says, do not stop gathering with other Christians. It's this. In a world where we are surrounded by lies and untruth and negativity and all of these things, right? The church is to be, and when I say church, I mean not only sort of the gathering together on weekends and to point out, but the church being the body of Christ, the relationships that we form, and it is our refuge and anchor to point us back, to remind us of who God is and who we are in light of who God is. That's what we do for each other.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna lob something that's challenging. Is what happens to the person that the negative voice was the church? So they got something in their past, and that voice that they hear was a church in the past.
That's a great question. So what I'd say, that's a great question, and that's true. I think that's real for a lot of people. What I would say is the church wasn't the negative voice. What I would say is that person that you're thinking of, that, remember we talked about, we started this whole thing with, it comes down to faces. And no one's ever been hurt by an institution.
They've been hurt by people.
They've been hurt by a person. And it actually is letting people off the hook when you depersonalize it. Like, it's letting people off the hook accountability-wise to say the church hurt me. No, it was that pastor, or it was that friend, or it was that Christian, and that's real. Like, that happens. Yeah. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
And maybe there's a lot of them too, because someone might be like, no, it was the whole congregation. It was like, okay, well, there was a lot of them, but it wasn't the global church.
It wasn't the global church. No. I mean, so don't generalize particulars. I think that's a principle. That's just a principle in life. I mean, this is how racism gets born. One person of another race hurts me, and I generalize the entire race, stereotypical now. This is, genders. I mean, like, a gender gets that way. The church, all Christians. Anytime you find yourself saying all, or those Christians, or those people of, or those white people, or whatever it might be, right? You have now actually, you've generalized particulars. And what I guess what I'm trying to say is, ironically, you've let the person off the hook. Because they don't have to take responsibility because it's been, and I'm saying, hold them responsible. Like, they did it.
And
my point is, the church didn't hurt you. Someone did, and that's real pain, and it deserves to be seen and acknowledged.
This is the baby in the bathwater, the fly in the ointment. This is when we throw away what is one of the greatest forces of good and compassion and grace and comfort and hope in this world, the fact that Jesus left us the church, and we throw it away because there was a bad actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes there's a lot of bad actors in one place.
Yes.
Because there's a culture.
Yeah. And so I think that's like also can be very real too. Yeah. And so it might not be returning back to where you were. It might 100%. Be finding somewhere new.
Oh, heavens.
Yes.
You know,
swim away, little fish. Get to a different congregation.
Yeah, because there might be a lot of
body.
Those, there might be a lot of that same person.
Yep.
In that institution or that place.
But that is not all of them. And, like, I pride myself that I think LCBC is one of those places where there's a lot of positivity.
I remember when, like, I had someone hurt me significantly when I was younger, And I remember someone going, and I think some people struggle with like, where was God, and almost blaming God for hurt. And I get that. I never really wrestled with that though, because I understand that wrestle, but I never, because I always felt, well, that wouldn't be holding the person who did it accountable. If I blame God, that's like saying, it's like, no, that person deserves to go to jail for what they did.
Yes.
So if it's again, it's subtle and it's ironic, but by doing that, I'm actually not holding the person responsible for what they did. It's like, no, they and they alone made those choices. So I actually think that's empowering.
That'll preach.
Dignifying in a sense.
So now we have people listening, and they're like, okay, I'm ready to eliminate the negative voices that are in my life. I'm ready to I want to fill my life with positive. So let's just spend a few moments talking about that. So how do we eliminate the negative person in our life? How do we share truth with grace, and how do we help negative people? Or
I don't think you can eliminate them, because you're a person and you live real life. So eliminate, I'd probably back up from that a little bit and go, I'm not sure if you're going to interact with people, human beings, you're never going to eliminate it. Joanna, you said a phrase earlier that I actually really liked. You said, the question is more just, how do you turn it down? How do you turn the volume down a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
And my point probably with the elimination thing is you could take that to an extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And now I could get really judgmental real quick with people around me. As soon as they say something, as soon as they just mess up, it's like, I got to eliminate you.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to turn the volume down. And that might mean, so I'd probably start there. So
Yeah.
I don't know where.
And I think too, it depends on if you have a personal relationship with a person, or like you had mentioned a minute ago, even then like pulling back from different media types or accounts you follow or whatever. So like, I'll be the first to say I've definitely like actually eliminated certain like social accounts I will follow if it feels like they're not serving me, or if they're reading into like, hey, you're not the perfect mom. Do you see these like little squares? These are perfect moms. So like, I think if that is something that you wrestle with, you should absolutely feel free. Like you can unfollow all day on that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it depends on having a personal relationship, or like, I don't know, like this could be the person in the cubicle that sits next to you. You're likely not going to be able to just not work with them anymore.
So what do you do?
So then what do you do?
Yeah. So if it's a coworker, if it's a spouse, if it's someone in a family member, a mom, a dad, your child, sometimes our children can be the negative voice. So what do you say to the person that, how do they navigate it when the person that is negative is in a glued in position and they can't unfriend them, they can't unfollow them, and turning them, how do you turn them down?
It's a very good question. I guess I would say a couple of things. I mean, one is you may have more agency than you know. So that'd be one thing. Maybe you can't not work with them, but maybe you can get another cubicle, different place. I don't know. I'm just trying, I'm trying to brainstorm here. If I was talking to someone in my office or whatever. And you definitely have agency over how much you participate in that relationship. You may not have, this is the difference between proximity and participation. You may not have a lot of choice over proximity.
Mm-hmm.
So you're stuck in some ways. I've got to go to class tomorrow and they're there, right? So that's a proximity issue. You always have choice in the level to which you participate in a relationship. And so that might mean joining in on conversations, or that might mean how much you pursue them in a conversation. Like that, you can stop. You can pull back on that kind of stuff. So I would just challenge to say, look, if there's a proximity issue that you can't get out of, you should probably begin to think about your level of participation in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more you participate in a relationship, the greater level of influence you give to someone in your life.
Yeah.
So
it makes me think of, in the book of Genesis, there's the story of Joseph. And in the story of Joseph, his boss's wife, and Joseph was a slave at this time, his boss's wife was a horrible influence and kept putting pressure on him to do, really bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this one little forgotten line in that passage. It talks about she kept putting pressure on him day after day. It says that Joseph kept out of her way as much as possible.
Mm.
And
proximity wasn't going to change. He had to be there.
He couldn't kick her out. It was the boss's wife, and she was going to be there. But he stayed out of her way as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a wise really good statement is to say is I can't change proximity, but I can change participation.
Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, we talked about spouses a lot. This is the situation that I think some people probably listening feel like their source of negativity or whatever is their spouse, or their parent, so what do you do with that? Because these are family dynamics now, and that's where it gets tricky. I guess I would just say, so again, proximity maybe doesn't change on that, but level up, and this stinks.
Yeah.
But you may have to pull back your level of involvement.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many young couples I talk to that are still tied in such a, I believe, negative way to their family, to their families that they love. The Bible says, Genesis says, and then Jesus affirms later that in marriage we leave our family behind, our family of origin behind. We leave, and some translations say cleave or cling to our spouse, right? That a husband and wife come together to create a new family. And you've got to leave. It all starts with leaving your family of origin. That's not physical leaving. That's emotional. And it's a deeper thing. It's an emotional leaving that you don't count on them for support anymore. And a lot of parents don't want their kids to leave. They keep trying to rope them back in, but you need to. I'm not sure how we got on this other than I think that's the source sometimes you keep running back to it. And here's my point. You can place boundaries on families too. You can place boundaries on, because a lot of what we're talking about is boundaries. And that's what you have to do when you're stuck with relationships. Maybe that you can't just ghost. Some people you just need to ghost, in my opinion.
Go on.
Well, I mean, like, you just got to leave them behind. Like, they are, and again, some people you can't do that with. Family, you can't really do that with. But I mean, like, friends and all that. I mean, like, there's some you can just, they are negative. They are leading me down a destructive path, and it's okay to go, I can't be with them anymore.
Jason, someone's listening right now that has that group of friends or that significant other, that boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah, some of you need to ghost your boyfriend.
Yeah, come on.
Your girlfriend. Or so let's say it another way. You need to break up with them, right? And so I don't even really know. Ghosting is kind of like you're gone forever, right? And didn't really let them know. So that might not be the best approach. My point, it's a principle more that I'm getting at is you have control over your life. Like you make decisions for your health, no one else. And the best thing you know it usually. Where it makes, here's why people stay in bad relationships is they've made a decision at some point that the pain that they experience in that relationship or the destructive whatever is less than the need that's being met. And usually those needs that are being met are so, again, they're like, well, at least I have a roof over my head with this person. At least I'm whatever.
They'd rather have a bad boyfriend than no boyfriend.
Exactly.
Or bad friends than no friends.
Exactly.
Well, and sometimes sometimes that just also takes really hard conversations.
Yeah.
So like, it's funny. Again, like I can just keep pulling from personal experience on a lot of this stuff.
Sure.
That like, so Kevin and I had been dating, probably for 2 or 3 years at this point. And we did not have the same faith belief system. And like, guys, when I tell you, I can like literally remember the moment. Like that's not a joke. Like I remember what the air smelled like. It was snowing that day. We were living out in Minneapolis. It happened to be an Easter Sunday. And I went home, like I went to Easter for the first time in a long time. Because I needed to, and I walked home that day and I was like, I got to tell Kevin, either we were engaged, like we're either not going to stay engaged or like we really have to figure out what faith looks like together because this is just not a thing. I went back to church for the first time in a long time and realized like that is who I am. And like this might not be the best thing for him or I if we continue down this path. And like, guys, I mean, I could just cry on the spot thinking about that moment.
Because you loved him.
Yes. Well, and he loved me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
you knew what you'd be giving up.
Oh my gosh.
In the sense of how he made you feel and all that stuff.
Yeah. And God, like, I'm not making up a moment of this.
Yeah.
And I mean, 13 years later, like, we're very lucky that like God also captured his heart in just a really crazy, like awesome way. But I would be lying if I said like that was easy or that like I would have been giving up a lot had I had to walk away that day.
But you would have gained everything because you would have gained your future faith, your faith of your family.
Yeah, but in that moment, it wouldn't have felt like that.
No.
So even someone listening today that's like literally feeling that right now, that's a risky thing. Yeah. That's like a lot at stake. And I am lucky that he said, yes, let's figure it out.
Yeah. And he may not
because he also could have said, sorry, Joanna, then you're on your own. Like,
and that's where you're trusting at that point that Jesus, if I do this,
it's a leap.
It is. That's trust. Like I'm trusting Jesus. You're going to provide for me the things that Kevin has given me. You will provide in ways I cannot see right now.
There is, I just don't believe that God's calling anyone, a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or a toxic friendship. I don't think God's calling anyone to rescue that person by being in the relationship. Yeah. You can't. I think Beauty and the Beast is a pleasant children's story, but it's not real. The beast often stays a beast.
Yeah.
And you're not the hero for this person. You can't save them. You can't rescue them. But you can rescue yourself.
I mean, we're getting like really deep on stuff, but I think it's hard sometimes for Christians to tell the difference between faithfulness and codependence. And faithfulness is generated in godliness, right? Like I'm going to be what the New Testament calls long suffering with someone. I'm going to keep being, I'm not going to give up on someone because they offend me once and all that, right? Yeah. Like Lewis Smedes defines faithfulness as sticking with the people you've been stuck with, which is a cool definition. So that's the Bible's the scriptures, this is what the people of God do, that we are faithful to each other, right, as well. Now, that very subtly can cross the line to codependence if you're not careful. And codependence is, I stick with you because I need you. Like my happiness and fulfillment in life is so entangled and enmeshed with your well-being now, I have to have you.
Well, that's how we had stayed together up until that point. I mean, even in Kevin and I's story, it's like we were real far down this road. Like all signs pointed to this was how we were going to end up.
Yeah. And I think when we're talking about negative, I think it's important to distinguish. We're not talking about abuse.
No, but see, the codependency stuff is why people sometimes stay in abusive. I mean, and so I'm just personal experience here.
Yeah.
I've got friends who stayed way too long in relationships that were abusive because they couldn't imagine their own sense of well-being and happiness and what God could that God would provide those things for them.
Yeah.
And it can be covered sometimes in spiritual language and all that. And all I'm trying to say is it's really more about you've handed them the keys to your happiness.
Yes.
And so you can imagine a scenario with, okay, well, even if they show up every night drunk and all that, like you find a way to live around it. And it's complicated. I'm not saying that's easy. I mean, like Jenny and I have walked through just hell with friends of ours who've faced this. I'm not saying any of this is easy. I'm just trying to say this is reality for so many people. And I think, you talked about earlier, like with the people that were so, again, you can ghost some people because they're not healthy and everybody knows that and they're toxic and they're not whatever. And you can just whatever, you can kind of go, it's the people that you still have to have proximity with. That's where the conversation has to be about boundaries.
Yeah.
And boundaries are, I've got to live with you in some way, shape, or form, but I choose and I have agency over the boundaries I place. That's the what was the other P word? We said proximity, and then there's what was
participation.
Yeah, participation. Yeah. I'm going to intentionally limit that's a boundary. I'm going to limit my participation with you because this isn't positive. This isn't God honoring. Yeah. This isn't leading me towards the fruits of the Spirit. It's not more loving, generous, and patient and kind and all that. So boundaries are good. Boundaries are healthy. Boundaries are not you giving up on someone. Boundaries are not mean. Yeah. Boundaries are you saying, I will honor God, the temple of God that he's given me with my body and my life and my mind and spirit by placing boundaries on some people that I don't have a choice proximity wise. I do have a choice in participation.
I think we can also have choices in level of influence that we give people.
Yeah.
So I think that all of us need an inner circle, the greatest level of influence, the most trusted people.
Yep.
That's not where the negative people go. That like
yep.
This has got to be the people that point you to the truth of God, and the positivity. You are a better human being and a child of God because they're in your life. That's the inner circle. And some people are saying, I don't have that.
Yeah.
They and the other circles, the ones out here, the ones that are negative and stuff, they maybe are in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And they're in this inner circle. So what do you say to the person that's like, I don't have any positive voices to put in the right
sort of that intimate circle?
Yeah, into the intimate circle.
Like they're not even in any of the circles, you mean?
Yeah, they don't have
they just don't have people.
They look around and they're like, who do I have?
Yeah. I mean, two things. Number one is the most inner circle is God. So you do, because God has given us his word to speak truth over you. So that's where it also, again, if all else, and when all else fails, God's word stands. So run to his word, run to the scriptures, run to the truthfulness and the promises of his word. That is your anchor above all other anchors. Okay, so I'd start there. The second is let the church be the church for you then. Put yourself in environments then. I think that's true. I think there's some people like, I don't even know, I don't have anybody who's interested in following Jesus with me or even interested in this. And that's fine. That's how, when I first gave my life to Christ, I kind of looked around, didn't have anybody. So you know what I had to do? I had to put myself intentionally in environments where I could develop those relationships. Mm-hmm. Those are groups. Those are Bible studies we have going on here at the church, group environments we have going on here at the church. And that doesn't mean you're going to become best friends with everybody there. It just means you're setting the stage for relationships to be developed. Yeah. That's all. Just put yourself in those environments. Put yourself around it.
And I think I'm gonna give a specific charge to parents. Again, from my experience in student ministry, as a parent, your job is to help assign those roles of your kids' friends. Your job is to help them find out who their inner circle is, who those outer circles are, and who are their far-reaching outer circles, and who are the just yuck, you're not going to hang out with them. Parents, it's not your kids' job. They don't know how. They do not know how, and
especially
they don't
early
know.
on.
And
early
so,
on, they don't know how.
So your job is to go like, no, you're not going to go to their house because you change when you hang out with them.
Yep.
Or no, you're not going to hang out with this person because they're always negative or they're always down on themselves, and I'm afraid you're going to be down on yourself. And so you have to take a vested interest. So many parents are so much more concerned about what kind of fruits and vegetables kids are consuming, but they don't give a rip about what friendships they are consuming. And so, sorry, this is my soapbox, but we as parents,
seems like a
job.
Fries your tater moment.
This is an absolute fries my tater moment. And guess what? It doesn't go away in the teen years.
No, but in the teen years, you have to shift a tiny bit to now I'm coaching my kids for them to know where in those concentric circles they move people and how to create boundaries and all that. Now I can start to have those conversations with them. And when they're early on, Solomon's 4, I'm determining that for him. He obviously doesn't have the capacity. Sienna's 7, my daughter's 17. I don't tell her who friends can be at 17. That's ridiculous. But we talk very often about how are you feeling about the people who are closest to you right now? Are they, and she's got to learn to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can paint a picture of what it should be.
Yeah.
And let them figure at 17,
mistakes.
you know, and be there to be like, that sucks, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then singles, I think if you're single and listening to this, the person that you will maybe eventually date or be with, I think that the chance to find those positive voices and test out if a person is negative is in dating and being engaged and stuff. So I think putting some weight on the dating process and saying, like, it's not just about attraction, it's not just about infatuation, and it's not just about love. It's about who is going to be that inner circle for you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if this person right out of the gate is not the kind of person that you would want in that inner circle, and then they're not your person.
Yeah. Or even if you're finding yourself in a stage of life where like singleness is just also where you feel like you're going to land.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's fine.
Yeah, I think it's like having that, still having it, like you still need that inner circle to be around you and to help figure out life with.
Yeah.
Because it is like, I mean, it's even a lot more than love. It's like finances or career changes, or like you just need people in your life that can help you even just vet those decisions. And I want those people to be people who are going the same way as me to help me vet big life decisions or small life decisions, you know?
Let's get real practical real quick about boundaries with family or people that you're kind of, I'm going to use the word quote unquote stuck with.
Yeah.
I think that can go, first of all, let me tell you something that Jenny's shared with me that I think is actually helpful when you think about boundaries. Jenny actually talks about boundaries in the context of fences, and fences can be shut or they can also be slowly opened. And that might be even a better way of thinking about it, that it's not a permanently closed brick wall. It may be for a season, but it's got a fence on it. And if I see after a year, some of the boundaries are being respected and all that, I may open the fence a little bit. I'm not going to open all the way because I know where that went. So there's sometimes wisdom in saying, I'm going to view this as I need to close the gate right now. But if there's a history of positive, I mean, like there's some good movement, I may open a little bit. So let's talk real practically though about boundaries. Boundaries could be, we're going to limit our time when we go back for a Christmas break. We're not going to stay for a whole day, stay for a couple hours because I know where that goes. You know, we know where that's a boundary that you may say for me, I need to set that because I know where it goes. A boundary may be, I'm going to limit the amount of times that we're connecting and talking throughout a week. It's a boundary. A boundary might be, I'm just trying to say, like, this is where it gets real practical. Boundaries
Sometimes it's like topics.
Yes,
Like, hey,
a boundary could be a
out,
topic.
but we can't talk about that
I'm not
topic.
going there. I'm not going to go on that topic.
That's really good.
A boundary could be, I'm not going to share personal and intimate details of my life with you because you've repeatedly broken trust. And so we'll talk about surface level stuff and we're good with that. We'll relate to each other as that now. The boundary is, though, I'm not sharing with you about this or that, right? That's a boundary. These are real. This is what we mean. This is what I mean by say you have choices over your level of participation in a relationship. All of those kinds of things are participation.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Guys, that's great. So, Jason, do you want to kind of, if you were to kind of encapsulate everything we talked about, like, you know, how would you give a final, like, kind of, you know, summarization of everything we just said?
Oh, I would say the Proverbs, the ancient Proverbs in the scriptures are as true today as they've ever been, which makes sense because it's God's word. And walk with the wise, you'll become wise, and walk with fools and you'll suffer destruction. In other words, we will become like the people we're closest to and that we're hanging with. With that brings a sense of responsibility that we need to critically reflect on the voices and the people that are closest to us in our life. And if they are leading us continually in a negative direction, we should do the work to determine whether or not our level of participation in those relationships. Boundaries are healthy. Boundaries are good. Boundaries are God-honoring. Boundaries are self-honoring. And when you feel like you're losing, or when you feel like you don't have people, and when you need support, the church is to be and should be those relationships that we can give ourselves to that will remind us of the truth. You've got negativity in your life and you know it. Recognize it, remove it, and replace it. And ultimately, I think what we want to say is God's word, the truth of God's word, how you replace it. Start there and then move out and go, and who do I have around me that will remind me of the truthfulness of God's word?
Good. Well said. Well said. Well, that brings us to another end of Live Change Podcast. As always, we love that you're joining in on the conversation. So if you want more people to be a part of the conversation and you want more people to hear about the kind of stuff we're talking about and the hope that Jesus offers, all we ask you to do is like, subscribe, write reviews, do these kind of things because it just gets the podcast out there to more people. And as always, Live Change is about, now that we're a life changed by Christ, how do we live that change out? So go this week and live change.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow the show, send today's episode to a friend, and leave a review. The Live Changed podcast is produced by LCBC Church. LCBC stands for Lives Changed by Christ. We are one church in multiple locations across Pennsylvania. For more information about LCBC, resources from this episode, and ways to grow in your relationship with Jesus, go to lcbcchurch.com.